What was your "you need to see a doctor" moment? When my appendix ruptured at midnight. I had been feeling a weird dull pain for the last few days, but this felt like I'd just been stabbed and actually made me see stars. I ended up going to my next-door neighbors, who I'd never spoken to before, and begged the wife to call 911 for me. Instead, she yelled for her husband. He asked me a few questions, poked me a few times, and asked me to jump. When I couldn't, he drove me to the hospital with his wife. On the way there, he called my hospital and told the person on the other end of the line, "This is Dr. Anderson, fake names here. I'm bringing in a patient with insert medical terms here. ETA, whatever time." And a whole bunch of directions that I can't remember. Then the wife informed me that her husband was the medical director of the hospital I went to. Once we got to the hospital, it was honestly one big blur. And I was only conscious for some of it. I ended up being rushed to surgery and stayed in the hospital for roughly a week. And to add a wholesome note to this whole story, the medical director's wife stayed by my side for the entirety of that week. Even while I was sleeping, unconscious. She also drove me home after I was discharged. And she and her husband became my second parents until they retired and moved to be closer to their own daughter. When I was lying in my bed, I suddenly felt pain in my back. I took some painkillers, thinking it'd go away. Haha. Nope. It just got worse. Fast. I woke my mom at 5-ish am, begging for help. She refused and got mad at me for waking her, and went back to sleep. Another 2 hours later and I'm curled up on bathroom floor, unable to stand up. The pain is so unbearable, all I can do is endlessly throwing up and weep. My mom called ambulance and boy, was the paramedic furious with her. Spent nearly entire day at the hospital. It was a kidney stone. I have never felt such pain before or after. I feel like I encounter this almost daily in mom groups. Ladies, my baby has a gaping wound on her arm. What should I do? Pics in comments. Go to a doctor. I put breast milk over it but it's still leaking pus. Go to a doctor. Is it safe to put a turmeric and coconut oil mix over it? Are you making curry on your child? Get to a doctor. Kidney stones. You know how most things you can kinda work your way through on your own? Like, bandage it up. Drink some water. Take a Tylenol and wait it out? Kidney stone doesn't play like that. It has to be what it feels like to take gut shots from Tyson. I've never gone to a doctor more enthusiastically in my life. When I couldn't walk up my driveway after volleyball practice, my ankles were swollen and I could barely bend them. Turned out a bunch of my ankle bones were fused together due to a birth defect which caused a bunch of issues with my tendons, resulting in acute tendinitis in both of my ankles. Had to essentially have both ankle joints totally reconstructed. Very painful and long recoveries but well worth it. Smiley face. Edit. Wow, thanks for all the upvotes. I couldn't catch my breath. I went to a concert. A lot of pyrotechnics were used. Came home, felt okay. During the night I could hardly breathe. Had my boyfriend take me to the ER. Turns out I had pneumonia, but didn't have a fever or anything. Found a primary care doctor and after the pneumonia cleared I was still having trouble breathing. More tests, X-rays, etc. He finally said, well, by your history it seems like you've always had underlying asthma. Took 27 years to find that out because my parents and other childhood doctors never believed me when I said my chest hurt when I was exercising, and they never put 2 and 2 together as to why I'd always get bronchitis whenever I got sick. I woke up and threw up in the dark into the throw-up bucket. I then couldn't stop throwing up. When I went to the bathroom to dump the bucket, I noticed blood in it. So I woke up my parents and told them. They still took showers before they took me urgent care. All never forgot how confused and dumbfounded I was with their lack of urgency at the situation. First time I had an oral migraine. I was 12 and in the shower getting ready for school. And suddenly I couldn't see. My vision looked like when you stand up too quickly and get stars. But that was my entire field of vision. And it didn't go away. I freaked out and screamed for my mom, who had no idea what was going on when I explained it to her. So she took me to the ER down the road. And after we explained what was going on with my vision, the intake nurse said, "Oh, she's about to get one whopper of a headache." They gave me a shot of Reglan, which knocked me out for a full 2 days. I had a friend return from somewhere exotic complaining of scalp pain. Spent 10 minutes digging through her hair at school to find a botfly in her scalp. Pulled it out myself. Took her to the nurse. Showed the woman that ugly a thing. And my friend was excused for the rest of the day to go to the hospital. Hospital found one in her lower back. And another in her shoulder. 2. Got called for a chest pain patient who like 45 to 50-ish. He had all the classic size. Chest pain. Short of breath. Left arm pain. Jaw pain. Super sweaty. We hooked up the 12 lead and it showed a huge myocardial infarction. Everything was saying this is the big one, dumbass. But yet he tried to refuse to go. We had to straight up say that if you don't go, we will be back to pronounce you dead today. When I used hand soap and I didn't know made you tired, so I went right to sleep and I woke up with my on fire. I told my parents and they took me to the doctor. Imagine getting burn cream for your cause your dumbass used soap. SMH. When I started blood at work. Then again when I out so much blood I went pale and got dizzy. Lots of blood stuff out of naughty bits for me. Short version. I dislocated my patella during wrestling practice. I had arrived from school around noon and proceeded to fall asleep because I was not feeling well. I managed to wake up at 4 and began to freak out that I was late for wrestling, which had begun at 3. I bolted out the door and drove myself back to school. Now practice had been going on for an hour and everyone was ready to fight. I had just woken up. Still felt like. And was stiff as. My partner is drilling his double leg takedown on me across the room. Now the room is old and the mats aren't even touch. So there are gaps in between. Now my partner shoots and gets a solid double. But my ankle got caught in one of the gaps. My body went one way and my knee the opposite way. My partner finished his shot and we came down. His body weight popped my knee back in. I tapped him saying, "Get off man, get off." I see my kneecap is more toward the back of my leg rather than the front. I scream AMD. My coach comes over to see why the was I yelling about. The whole team comes over and sees my injury. My partner is saying, "You can punch me if it makes you feel better," and the coach has the sport trainer come over. Once the sport trainer came by he saw that and said, "I'm not touching that, we need to call paramedics." The paramedics came and first said, "If you straighten out your leg maybe it'll fix itself." But that didn't work, so they said, "We're not touching it without you getting an X-ray. You need to see a doctor." So I was finally hauled away just for a doctor to slide my kneecap with this thumbs back to its place. My guy said, "On the count of 3," and slid it back on 1. Man, that was a good day. Also when I began coughing up blood when I contracted swine flu in 2009. But that's a whole different story. When I started having heart episodes at work, my heart rate would get crazy high. And my doctor ordered a bunch of testing. Caught an episode on the Holter monitor. And my heart rate reached 280 BPM. Diagnosed with SVT. And now I get to see the cardiologist Monday. Incredibly frustrating since I can't work for the time being. I work with machinery. And I can't walk away or sit down to stop an episode. Nearly passing out is also dangerous. Until we get a solution. I'm only 21. Edit. To clarify, I took my leave of absence from work and school initially because my doctor and I thought I was anemic again. Which has caused me to pass out and depleted all of my energy and focus in the past. First time I ever had a panic attack. Not minor freak out like some people think a panic attack is. A real medical panic attack with the same symptoms as a heart attack. Burst appendix. It felt like I was stabbed and acid was poured in because. Well, that's actually what happens. A few months ago I almost died of an allergic reaction that I was unaware of. Doctor put me on amoxicillin for an infection. 10 days into the prescription, I break out in hives. I had never been so itchy in my life. I went to the hospital. They gave me an allergy drug. And sent me home. The next morning I wake up with a lump in my throat. I tell my wife that I must have caught a cold at the hospital. 30 minutes later, my wife is racing me to the hospital. I can hardly breathe. I go into the entrance while she goes to find somewhere to pay $75 for parking. I passed out from lack of oxygen at the triage desk. Next thing I know, I'm in a wheelchair with an epinephrine in my arm. Let me tell you, I could definitely go for one of those epinephrine shots again. There's no greater feeling than coming back to life as Superman for 45 minutes. Something tells me it wouldn't be half as good unless I was almost dead again. Doctor wanted me to carry an EpiPen at least until my allergy test came back. If the allergy was indeed something avoidable like amoxicillin, then I would be safe to not carry one. I told the doctor that this EpiPen is going to become a recreational EpiPen the moment you tell me that my allergy is amoxicillin.